thank you all for being here as we close Infrastructure Week. We thought it would be appropriate to bring some good news that highlights the importance of infrastructure and why it's so important that it functions across the country. So in about February or early March, the Water Department suggested to me that in light of the fact that there had been lead found in schools in New York State and in Ithaca, and of course across the country, that we should proactively test our schools in Syracuse, our high schools and grammar schools. So I contacted the city school district as well as all of the private schools, the charter schools and the Catholic schools that are located within the city of Syracuse, and asked them if they would like to have their water system tested for lead. And they all agreed to do that, and it turned out that Most Holy Rosary had actually arranged for it to already be done, so they did not partake in this offer. So we tested 43 schools, and what we did was we tested 2 samples from each school building, one nearest the intake of water and one furthest away. And what this protocol does is it delivers an understanding of the entire system, which can determine if a problem might exist. So you test close to the intake of the water to determine if there's an issue with the service line, and you test the site furthest away from the source to indicate whether or not there is an issue with the building's internal plumbing. So just a little nomenclature for all of you. We have the water mains, which are in the middle of the roads generally and underground, and the line or pipe that connects the water main to the house or the building is called the service line. We in the city of Syracuse have a lower vulnerability to lead in our water because our water mains are made of cast iron and most recently plastic-based material. Also, our service lines, which connect individual properties to the water mains, are also not made of lead, except for some of those service lines that were put into place before 1930. Now, with those service lines before 1930, the Water Department regularly tests a random sample of homes for lead service to see if there is lead in the water. We have also have worked with the EPA over the years to make sure that we're doing the proper treatment, and also have, back when I was on the council, did a significant infrastructure improvement in some of the older houses, removing the lead service lines. We do still, though, have a number of older houses who have lead service lines. As I said, we randomly sample those and test those and work with the homeowners. If a homeowner has a house that was built before 1930 and wants to have their service line tested, we in the Water Department and the City of Syracuse will do that. You just have to contact us and we'll arrange for that. So even though our system, both under the protocol of the EPA, which looks at the actual construction of our water lines, makes us less vulnerable to lead in the water, we still went through the practical aspects of testing all of the schools in the city of Syracuse. And so we went through and tested the schools in 2 places. And when we received our first test conducted at the end of March, we saw that all the public schools came back with safe readings, save one. And that one school was the Delaware Elementary School, which had an unusually high reading near the source, but a negligible level furthest from the source. We contacted the school district immediately, said make sure that they don't use any water from that source, and that testing site was not located in a place where students would get water normally. We then went and tested every fixture in the building, and these are all, you have these, and when we came back, we found that all of the fixtures, save one room, were all below the lead result. So with that one room, we suggested to the school district that they remove the sink and the fixtures there and replace them, which they have assured us they have done. The second school that came up with a lead result that was unacceptable was the Syracuse Academy of Science. And again, it was one reading in one room. We went back and we tested all of the locations within the Syracuse Academy of Science. And when they came back, they were all below the EPA requirements for what is acceptable levels of lead. Nevertheless, we suggested to the Syracuse Academy of Science that they replace the fixture that had given us the high test. They have said that they are going to do that just as a matter of complete and total extra precaution. So the good news is that all of the schools within the city of Syracuse do not have issues with their lead. The good news also is that it shows that our water system, because of its uniqueness and because we test all the time, it shows that we are incredibly vigilant about the quality of our water, and that is inuring to the benefit, the public safety health of people and their children in the city of Syracuse. And I use this, again, as an example of saying to people, infrastructure is incredibly important to our quality of life, our public safety, and our public health. And because we have such a great infrastructure system, with water in particular here in Syracuse, we don't have to worry about what some other communities, Flint, Michigan, and other places, Hoosick Falls in New York State, what they are worrying about right now. So we're thankful for that. I want to thank the Water Department for proactively coming up with this idea. I want to thank the school districts, both the parochial, private, and public school districts, for working with us on this. And I'd be happy to open up to any questions anybody has.
Before this, when was the last time the schools tested for lead, or how often?
Well, so the way the EPA guidelines work is that we have to test for lead. Now we have to test for lead every 3 years. If we get abnormally high readings for any reason, then we would have to test more. But because our readings have been so consistently low on our system, we have not had to test that. So we take weekly tests at 50 different places throughout the city of Syracuse, and the EPA follows those guidelines.
So you had a pretty decent idea going in then that it was likely not going to turn anything up, and this was just a triple check to be sure?
I think so, but Jeff, you just never know in today's day and times. We thought, given the fact that we have a waiver, so we don't have to have a filtration plant, we are much more vigilant in order than other water systems because of that waiver. And so we have a sense that we catch things because we're constantly testing our water and constantly thinking about it. And also, we have done things proactively to address any potential. So we add a chemical, which I'm not going to pronounce for you, into our water system since, I think, 2000, Beth? The orthophosphate. We add that into the system. That is a chemical that prevents leaching from lead. Now, as I said, the overwhelming portion of our infrastructure system is not lead. Our water mains are not lead. The vast majority of our service lines are not lead. But there are fixtures in the city of Syracuse, particularly in older houses, that would be lead. And so what we have, this chemical, when you add it, prevents the leaching of it, and as a consequence, we have not seen high readings. But you always want to be careful, and that's why, as a government, when you think about infrastructure, what matters is often what you're doing when nobody's thinking about it, nobody's looking for it.
Will there be any sort of increased oversight at Delaware School going forward, and do you test again in a year?
Well, we will continue to be vigilant about it. And when we went through and tested every single fixture came back under what the EPA guideline is. We think it was just one old fixture in there, and it was also in a strange place in terms of having a high reading. But obviously, everybody's aware of it, and they proactively removed the sink.
What do you mean a strange place?
Well, you find it in the protocol. There's the closest and then the furthest away, and I'll ask Beth to talk about how it works.
Actually, the sink in question is located in...
Oh, sorry. Beth Smith from the Water Department.
Hi, the sink in question was actually located in a work closet, a janitor's basement work closet. So I don't believe any student would obtain water from that.
This wasn't
source.
a drinking water source?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
And just to be clear, so it was just that one fixture in that one sink in Delaware and one fixture in that one room in the Academy?
Exactly, and that one fixture at the Academy of Science was in a science laboratory. So again, I don't believe that was actually consumed.
How extensive would you guess that the testing was then? If we're testing every single fixture, are we talking thousands?
Let me just be careful here, Jeff.
Yeah.
So we tested, the initial tests
Yeah.
for each school were done in two places, closest and furthest away. And then when we had readings that were elevated, that's when we tested every single fixture. So you could count it with your,
It wasn't every single fixture in that.
every single building. It was not, because there was no reason for us to do that. There's nothing about the data that said that we should do that.
How long was the whole process, the testing process?
Well, we started in March, I guess,
The end of March.
and then we got the results in April, but then we went back for Delaware twice, went back to the testing places twice. We did every fixture in Delaware and every fixture in the School of Academy of Science, so I think altogether maybe 6 to 8 weeks. Most of that time was waiting for the results.
It was the water department that conducted the testing?
Yes, I believe so, right?
The school district performed the actual drawing of the water sample.
All right.
And then we issued it we sent it to the laboratory. And
What
then
laboratory?
Life Science,
Which is where?
Butternut Street in DeWitt.
Okay.
Can you sort of sum up Infrastructure Week? I know that when the Common Council passed their budget, they sort of shifted millions of dollars to paving more roads, stuff like that. Can you sort of sum up this week, and then, there's still challenges ahead, right?
Sure, yeah. So, all of you who have covered me have known I've spent years talking about this issue of infrastructure. And when I first started talking about it, people would say, it's not sexy, it's not interesting, nobody cares about it, you can't cut a ribbon over something underground, nobody wants to do it. In light of, I think, Flint, Michigan in particular, that really captured the public's attention and said, wait a second, how can we have a water system that leaches lead, that poisons children and families in an entire city and not know about it? So this week is chosen to really highlight that when infrastructure works well, nobody thinks about it. But what I wanted to do was draw attention to the fact that it is a basic essential to living in a city, working in a city, and functioning as a society. So when we talk about roads, and I talked about how we're looking at potholes, talking about Monday, talking about how we've been using in Washington. On Monday, I talked about how we have used data and technology to help our infrastructure investments go further, and looking at sensors and measuring data and how we make decisions and using data to make smart decisions about infrastructure. Tuesday, touring the Skinny Atlas Water Facility, which is over 100 years old. So you could all see how extraordinary it is that we get water from 20 to 30 miles away. By gravity, it gets delivered to people's homes and businesses in the city of Syracuse, and it's clean and fresh, and it's an extraordinary system. And so you got to see the one end of it that, frankly, nobody really ever thinks about because, we don't ever cover Skinny Atlas that much. And yesterday we talked about potholes and using data and how to be more efficient and effective, and how we can use data and GPS systems and new treatments to extend the life of our roads and do that. Also fill more potholes and be very efficient about that. And then today, given that the country is thinking about places like Flint, Michigan, here in New York State, people in Peterborough and Hoosick Falls are thinking about chemicals in their water and very deeply concerned about that. Saying to people, you don't have to be concerned about that here in Syracuse, but here's another instance where infrastructure affects your daily life. I don't know if that was enough of a summary, Tom.
It was, but is there a next step? Is there anything you're looking towards that still needs to be worked on?
Well, there are always next steps. We could always use more money. The state, both the federal government and the state government gave money for surface transportation and roads and potholes. And one of the things that I've been talking about with state leaders and federal leaders is give us some more flexibility on that money, because roads are really 3 dimensions. There's potholes, and then underneath those, there are water mains and utility pipes, and there are sewer mains. So if you could give us money where that would allow us to go down into the road and fix all of that infrastructure at one time, so we don't put a brand-new mill and pave and reconstruct a mile of road for about $1 million, and then 48 hours later have a water main break underneath it and have to cut into that, cut into that asphalt. So there's always more to do, but I am really heartened by the fact that this has become a subject of public discussion. And the public discussion has now gotten to the point where infrastructure is important. It's a basic function of government. We have not done enough. So what are we going to do in the future to make sure that Flint, Michigan doesn't happen to other places in the country, to make sure Hoosick Falls and Peterborough. I just saw last night that there was a bridge in Oklahoma City that collapsed. Last year there was the Amtrak crash in Philadelphia. So if we want to keep people safe and we want to have a functioning economy and a functioning society, we need to invest resources in infrastructure, and people across this country are talking about that and thinking about it. Anybody else? All right.
How many buildings? I think you said this, but.
Did I
how
say
many
40,
buildings?
43? 43.
That's the combination of public and private schools?
Right. High schools and grammar. Alex is saying to me, it's 45 total, not you, Alex, the other Alex. It's 45 total, 43 immediately came up with a clean bill of health.
Okay.
And then there were 2 that we had to do some extra testing in. Again, all of that is in your
So with the two
wonderfully colored,
Delaware and Syracuse.
Okay, so that's the
right.
two,
And just to be completely clear, Holy Rosary did it on their own. So I'm assuming that they have no problems, or they would have been in touch with us about it. All right?
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.